everyone, and I wanted to just welcome you here today. Social entrepreneurship has been a passion of mine growing up. It was something that I knew I wanted to work in, getting involved in a nonprofit that was run with business principles, but there was no name for that. So when I was first starting out, I had to tell you a funny story. I love to start off with something funny. I had been searching and trying to find my right calling, and finally there was a gentleman who got up there and talked about, we need to, it's either called entrepreneurial philanthropy or social entrepreneurship, and it's about running a nonprofit with business principles. And I've been looking for what I wanted to do, and tears were streaming down my face. I'm like, I found it, this is what it is. And I went to the payphone. Yes, we didn't have cell phones then. I went to the payphone and I called my dad and said, Dad, I know what I want to do. I want to be a social entrepreneur. He said, great, can you get paid for it? I said, I'll call you back later. Okay, so, at that point, the industry was so, little developed. You had like Bill Drayton and Ashoka, and pretty much that's it. And then Jed Emerson started with Red F. But other than that, there wasn't a lot going on. And so it was, and Stony Brook Farms as well too, I think, up in the Pacific Northwest. But not a lot on SE going on. And so I am so thrilled that there are classes, there are masters in this now. It is so exciting, and what a gift to be able to be a part of it and to be here today. So thank you for having me. So, social entrepreneurship. We need to make a difference in a strategic, business-like way while serving our communities. This was Peter Samuelson. I don't know any of you know the movie Revenge of the Nerds. It was an old cult classic movie. He's a film producer of that, Arlington Road, other films like that. And he's the one who I heard this term from. Now I encourage you in your life, as you meet people that inspire you, stay in touch with them. Peter was the one who said this to me more than 20 years ago. He's now on our board. I stuck to him like glue. If a speaker inspires you, someone like that, they'll mentor you, they'll help you. Stay in touch with them. Peter and I have now known each other for 20 years, and he's been on my board for probably 10 and keeps renewing. So I feel very grateful. So, that's the kind of thing that I just was like, no, I am following you. I am, and I was relentless, and he let me sit in on all of his board meetings, and I just got to understand what it was like to be a social entrepreneur. So I encourage you to keep those relationships whenever you come across that. So in the fundamentals of social entrepreneurship, I want to go over a couple of things it's not, because we talk a lot about what it is. I don't think it's doing good works, because that's just service. I don't think it is changing the world, because I think that's just a good person. We can all change the world. You can say hi to a homeless person, which I highly recommend you do, and not walk by and ignore them. But that's just being a good person. Nonprofit? No. Why? It can be for-profit, it can be government. Innovative? No, because that's just innovation, and you could be just regular for-profit company. New idea that changes a system? That's entrepreneurship. So then the question then is, what is social entrepreneurship? It's a mission-driven organization that revolutionizes a system or a product in a way that scales. That's what it is. It's scalable, it revolutionizes a system, and it takes apart a system or a product and introduces it in a new way. That's what social entrepreneurship is. It's not just an easy, I have a great heart, I want to start a nonprofit. You can't just start a nonprofit and be a social entrepreneur. And it's not just nonprofits, there are for-profits that are social entrepreneurs as well. So it uniquely addresses a social need and makes money. Not everyone thinks that social entrepreneurship, that you need to generate revenue. I do. I think you need to prove that it is viable in the market, as well as that it is doing something in the social good arena as well too. So I'm pretty strict on that term. Just because you're serving a social need and doing it in a business-like way, to me, is not enough. You need to show that you can generate revenue. As a social entrepreneur, I strongly believe you need to have a social return on investment. What is the return that you're giving back to the community? If the value of the volunteer's hour is $23 by independent sector, it's worth $922. The volunteer trip is 2 weeks, and that means that with 17,000 volunteers, we've matched more than $31 million worth of volunteer hours. This is a critical slide. You have to have this on every presentation if you want to be a social entrepreneur. This will hit your funders, whether they're for-profit or non-profit, whether it's a foundation or whether it's a biggest Silicon Valley investors. So the structure of that can be for-profit, social responsible for-profit, it can be non-profit, it can be hybrid, any of those. I don't think it has to be one classification, but I will encourage you, please choose the classification that serves you best. For me, I chose non-profit, and there's a reason why. While we do generate revenue, and we're now between 60 and 80% sustainable just from our companies alone, I wanted to choose our mission first if I ever needed to. Whenever I am faced with a decision of, should we work more on our public website and serve the people who are impoverished across the world, or should I go close another company? I chose nonprofit status so I could choose the mission side if I wanted to. So let's go over then, moving now to you. You've got the structure of the organization. Top qualities of social entrepreneurs. You're story-driven and you're cause-driven. You really need to have a strong mission here as to why you were involved in this. You do possess boundless drive. Even when you're tired, you're excited. Doesn't mean that you have to be extroverted, but you got to drive. You got a core that's pulling you forward. You're willing to be unorthodox. It's not easy. You get a lot of no's and it's very hard sometimes, but you have to be willing to go, I'm going to go against the grain. When I was starting Universal Giving, a top foundation executive, who's an amazing person these days, said to me, is there a market for international giving? Is there even anyone who wants to give internationally? Well, now, of course we know there is, right? But that was really scary for me. I was like, I'm in my 20s and I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I prove this? There wasn't the data and the documentation to show that. There was on crisis relief side, but not on ongoing giving. So you could show crisis was a tsunami, but how could I prove that a portal people would want to gift internationally? And then right after that, as if that wasn't enough, then we hit 9/11. And how many people do you think wanted to give internationally after 9/11? Not that many. Everyone was all closed in, right? But you have to have that vision and say at some point America's going to open up again and it's going to heal. And so you had to launch anyways. That's what I thought. And I went and I launched anyways, and the first 2 years were dry, and then we popped. So the first 2 years was working out of my home, off my savings, because I knew I had to wait until the market caught up. And it took about a good 20 months before people were starting to be comfortable giving. And that was in the early 2000s, right? So international giving was not taking place, and then you had 9/11, and that was really hard for our nation. Be persistent. I could do a whole slide on this. Be persistent, be persistent, be persistent again. When I run marathons, there's one thing that goes through my mind. If you made it that last step, you can make it the next. You decide if you give up. I'm not thinking about mile 20 on mile 13. I think you made the last step, make the next one. You made that step, then you do the next one. And you just stay very quiet and keep being persistent. Because that's strong ethics. We don't talk about this enough. You will not succeed long term without good ethics. Make decisions based on principle. Don't base it off of feelings. What is the right thing to do? Make decisions based on principle, not on values, not on your values, on principle. What is the right thing to do empirically for anyone? Always check yourself against that and do it again and again and again.